Hello viewers, welcome to this video. Right, in this video we will be looking at alerting in Kubernetes. So you can configure rules to monitor your Kubernetes cluster, and when something goes wrong, or if you're wanting to know about what's going on in Kubernetes, you can set up rules and you can set up alerts. And specifically we are going to look at how we can alert to Slack. So as you all know, some of you are in my Just Me an Open Source Slack workspace. So we will be looking at alerting to Slack, and we will be using Rancher for this. So the last two videos we looked at monitoring and logging using Rancher. So how easy it is to enable logging and enable monitoring for your Kubernetes cluster with Rancher. I've also done videos without Rancher using Elasticsearch, Fluentd, and then logging and monitoring and so on. But the last two videos were about how to do those things easily with Rancher's built-in monitoring and logging. So this time we will be looking at alerting. So in order to use alerting, you need to enable logging. So go back to my previous two videos, and I think the previous video was about logging, yes, and then the other video was about monitoring. So enable logging in your Kubernetes cluster using Rancher, and start a Rancher container, import your existing cluster, and then you can follow this video to enable alerting. So in order to alert to Slack, you need to create a Slack app and then create a Slack bot user and create an incoming webhook, which I won't be covering in this video, but I've got my Slack workspace here. So that's the Slack workspace. I've created a channel called Rancher K8s Alerts. So this is the workspace, and I've created a Slack app called Just Bot, and in the incoming webhooks I've got my webhook URL created. So in the webhook URL, when you create a new webhook URL, you attach it to a channel. So we can use any automation tool, any scripting or anything, and use this webhook URL and post messages to our Slack channel. So this webhook that I've created is hooked to the Rancher K8s Alerts channel, which is here, Rancher K8s Alerts, and I've got my Rancher setup as well, and I've imported my cluster here, and I've got the cluster kubectl version 1.17.0 kubectl get nodes. Okay, for this demo, what I'm using for my Kubernetes cluster is just Docker containers using kind Kubernetes in Docker. Alright, so we've got our Rancher ready with our cluster imported. So I'm in the global mode. So if I select my cluster that I imported here, you can see all the stats here, and I've enabled the monitoring, I've enabled logging, that's why you see the Grafana here. Okay, so if I go to tools here, and there is alerts. Okay, so there are two types of there are two places where you see alerts. So one is the global cluster. So I've selected the top level of my cluster. I haven't selected any individual projects, just the top level cluster. And if you go to tools and alerts, you see a list of predefined alerts that has been configured when you start Rancher. So the thing to note here is alerts are just simple rules, and you need to have Prometheus running. So you need to enable logging. So if you go in here and go to the logging, you will have to enable monitoring. Cluster level monitoring is enabled, so I've already enabled monitoring. So once you enable monitoring in the system project, you will see the cattle Prometheus, which runs the Grafana, Prometheus, and everything, node exporters. So we've got Prometheus, which stores all the metrics. So based on the metrics that we store in Prometheus, we can create rules. Alright, so that's all covered in the last two videos about monitoring and logging. So for this video about alerting, you need to have monitoring enabled. And if you go to alerts here, so as I said, there are two places where you can see alerts. So one is the global. So that's my cluster level alerting. And if you go in here, you will see lots of alerts already set up for you. So alerts are grouped into alert group where you configure the notification. So that is an alert group called a set of alerts for HCD. Just give it a name for your alert group. And this alert group has got 4 alerts, 4 rules set up. and there is this other alert group with 2 alerts set up, and another alert group with 1, and another alert group with 3 alerts set up. So the concept is you can define alert rules and you can group them into an alert group. So that's one place where you go to the top level cluster and set up alerting, and you can also go to the individual project here and you can set up alerts. And there are different views. I mean, if you go to the project level alerts and if you go to the cluster level alerts, the rules that you can set up are customized for cluster level as well as for the project level, which we will see. Okay, so I'm going to go to my cluster level alerts first, and we can set up alert, but before that we need to set up notifiers. So at the moment you can see under notifiers section, notification hasn't been configured. So we've got alerts configured, but we haven't got notifications configured. So we need to configure notifier. So when an alert happens, where would you want to send the alerts to? So that's the notifier which we need to configure. So go to the tools and click on notifiers. So there are no notifiers at the moment. I'm going to add a notifier, and there are different things that you can notify: Slack, or you can notify via email. If I select email, it's going to ask me for the sender name, your SMTP server, and so on. You can configure PagerDuty, and you can configure webhooks, WeChat, and so on. So for this demo we will be using Slack. So select Slack and give it a name. Let's call it just me Slack. Okay, just me Slack, just a name, and the URL is the incoming web URL which I've already generated here. So I'm going to copy that rule here. So the incoming webhook when I set up in the Slack is already linked to this channel, so I don't have to specify the channel in the notifier section. So I just copy the incoming webhook URL and pasting it here. Default channel, don't worry about it because we've already configured that in the webhook URL. Send resolved alerts, I'm going to enable that. That means so whenever an alert gets triggered for critical or warning reason that you configured, and when it recovers, it also sends a resolved alert. So for that reason I'm selecting that, and I can click add. And if you want to test the integration to see if this incoming web URL is working, I'm going to see excuse me, you can click test to see if it's working. Test, and you can see in our Slack it says Slack settings validated. Cool. So that's Rancher sending a message to our Slack workspace using the incoming webhook URL. So that's working fine. I'm going to click add. So we've got one notifier configured. So now if I go back to alerts, and I can create new alert group, alerts, and so on. Okay, let's start by creating a new alert group. I can either edit any of these alert groups or any of these alerts and configure notification. Just to show you, I'm going to create a new alert group. Okay, so let's call it so we are at the cluster level, not at the project level, so let's call it demo cluster alerts testing or something. Okay, so that's the name of the alert group, and we can define our first alert rule here, and you will be able to add additional alerts once we create this. So let's add our first alert, and you can also keep adding more alerts in this page, or even after creating this alert group you can add more alerts later to this page. Okay, the first alert is the different ways you can alert. So this is what I was mentioning. So when you are in the global cluster level alerts, you will see these options, and you will see a different set of options when you are in the project level alerts. Okay, so when a system service is unhealthy, you can send a critical, warning, or info alert, and we can choose a notifier here. So because we've just got one notifier, Slack notifier, I'm going to select that one. Again, I'm going to leave the channel blank because the webhook URL is already hooked to a particular channel in my Slack workspace. And if you want to add additional notification, you can choose that one. But anyways, I'm not going to do that. I've got only one notifier configured. Okay, so that's done, and let's go back and look at our alert rule. We need to define a rule based on what we are looking at. So that's system service. So we've got scheduler, we've got etcd, controller manager. If any of them are unhealthy, you can send a critical, warning, or info notification. Probably critical makes sense here. Or when a normal event happens, and you can choose the type of event. When you create a daemon set, when you deploy a deployment node pod, say for example when you add a new node, you need to be notified and so on, or when a node is having problems. So basically when you do kubectl get events, you will see a list of events, and you can filter by whether it's a normal event or a warning event, and choose the type of event, and you can send a notification here, right? And you can also select a node, choose the node. So we've got 3 nodes, any particular node, and you see the options, the conditions have changed here, and we've selected a node, and we can send an alert saying when a node is not ready, send a critical alert or send a warning alert, or if a particular node goes the CPU reservation on that particular node goes over 70% or 95%, alert me, a warning alert. And then you can create additional rule with the same configuration and say when it goes over 99%, send a critical alert and so on, or if memory reservation is over 70%, and those type of alerts. So that's node. You can select different nodes, and so this lets you select a particular node, but you will have to create additional rules for each of your worker nodes. Or the other way would be to select use a node selector, and based on a key value pair, you can select a group of nodes, and you can apply this filter here: not ready, CPU reservation, memory reservation, and so on. Or finally, you can also use an expression. Okay, so in order to use the expression, you need to have the monitoring enabled. So that's what I was mentioning earlier. I've already enabled monitoring, but if you haven't enabled monitoring, you won't see this option, or you will see this option grayed out, disabled, and you will have a warning here saying you need to enable logging or monitoring in order to use the expression function. So since I've enabled that, I can choose an expression based on metrics stored in our Prometheus engine. Okay, so we've got a list of loads of metrics that our metric server Prometheus is monitoring. So we can choose one of them. Let's say we can choose, if I start typing pod, you can say Kube node status capacity pods, Kube node status allocatable pod, pod container status running, if Kube pod is created, lots of information about pods. What else we've got? Pod policy, pod label, pod status running, pod status terminated, pod schedule time, pod containers per pod count, and so on. There are lots of things that we can configure. Or kubelet running pod. So if I select that one, down here you can see on one of the nodes we've got 6 pods running, on the other node we've got 7 pods running, on another one it's probably the master node where we have 11 pods running, and at the moment we've configured the value, the threshold as 0, so that's the red line here. And let's say now it's at 12, and if I say if number of pods goes over 20, and you can see the red line shifted here, so that's the threshold we are setting. At the moment all of our all of our Kubernetes nodes are under the threshold 11, 7 and 6, the total number of pods that are running. So if any of these nodes crosses 20, if any of them are running more than 20 containers, then send me a warning alert, and then add additional rule, select the same expression, and if it's greater than 100, send a critical alert, and so on. So all those type of things that you can configure here. Okay, for this demo, let's take a look at an easy option. So I'm going to say deployment. Whenever a normal deployment event happens, like a deployment is created, a new replica set is created, a deployment has been upgraded, and so on, I'm selecting a normal event. Or you can select a warning event. If there is any problem with your deployment, then you will get notified. So if I choose a normal deployment event here and say happens, send an info, let's say info, because it's just a normal event, right? Okay, so we've configured our alert settings here. Show advanced options. Okay, so group wait time, how long to wait to buffer alerts of the same group. For example, if we get the same type of alerts too quickly, very often, then we can group the alerts before sending the message to Slack. So if I say 30 seconds, it will wait, it will buffer all the messages for like 30 seconds and then send just one message to Slack about all of them. Group interval time, at the moment it's set to 3 minutes. How long to wait before sending an alert that has been added to a group which contains. So we've got this rule here that's added to this group. So we need to give it a name, normal deployment event. So whenever, so we are just creating a rule under this alert group, and the moment we add this alert rule to this alert group, when should it start notifying us? So I don't want to say 3 minutes because for this demo we don't want to wait for 3 minutes. Let's say 5 seconds. So once I add this rule, and if it's already alerting, then it just waits for 5 seconds before sending our first Slack message. Repeat interval. So it won't be applicable for this type of selection rule because every event will be different. But if you say an expression and say pod count, kubelet running pod count goes above certain threshold, and if it's in the alert state, then it sends a message to the Slack, and we are configuring here what's the next time it needs to send the same message. So we don't want the same message posting to Slack quite often. We don't want to flood our Slack channel. So we are configuring a time interval. So just notify me every 1 hour about this alert, and so on. Okay, so that's done, and we can click create now. Okay, so where is our, must be at the bottom here. Yes, demo cluster alerts testing. So that's the alert group we created, and we have one rule, and you can add additional rule here. Add alert rule. You can add additional rules here. Okay, let's add another rule. Expression pod. Let's say pod running count. Kubelet running pod count, or yes, okay, kubelet running pod count. I'm gonna say above 5 because it's already in the alert state. I've set it as 5 because already the nodes are running more than the number that I've specified here. It should start alerting, and wait for 5 minutes. So if this condition occurs and if it stays there for 5 minutes, it will start alerting. But for this demo, let's change that to 10 seconds and create. Okay, where's it gone? It's here, and I haven't specified a name, so let's edit that rule and give it a name, running pods count. Okay, click on save. Where is it gone? Each time I save it, it just reallocates itself in a different place. Demo cluster alerting. So we've got 2 alerts configured, normal deployment event, running pods count. So I think this should get triggered very soon because already we are running more than the number of pods we've specified here. Okay, so now we haven't got any message yet. So let's try and test this alert here. A normal deployment event occurs, and that should send a notification to Slack. Okay, so for that I'm going to create a deployment in our Kubernetes cluster. kubectl run nginx -- image nginx. I'm just creating a new deployment. Let's kubectl get nodes. Okay, so sorry, kubectl get all, kubectl get events, kubectl get events. So you can see here there are events here, pulling image nginx, scaling up, replica set, and so on. Okay, so is it alerting? And you can see here it's changed from active to alerting, so it's alerting at the moment. And if you want to deactivate it, you can deactivate the alert, or you can delete the alert here, or you can actually mute the alert. So you don't want to send temporarily, you can disable your alerts by either deactivating or muting. So it still shows you that it's alerting, but you won't get any notification in your Slack. All right, so that's mute, and you can unmute it. So at the moment it says the status is alerting, so we should have received a message in our Slack channel. Let's try. Yep, there we go. So that's the alert that we've got from Slack. Show more. So normal event of deployment occurred. Normal event of deployment occurred. Alert name is the name of the alert. Normal deployment event. Alert name is normal deployment event, whatever we configured. Severity is info, because we've if I edit this, we've set the type of the alert as info. So that's, and you can see here this is also now in the alerting state. Running pods count, because it has crossed the 5 threshold that we set. And if we go back here, we should have got an alert, but I don't see an alert here. Okay, maybe it will send an alert shortly. If I edit it, show advanced options, nope, it's all looking good, but I haven't received an alert here. But soon we will receive an alert here as well. And you can see here it's both are in the alerting state. Okay, and normal deployment event, workload name is Nginx, so that's the deployment that we created. Yep, there we go. So you can see here the different types of alerts. So this is an info alert based on the color that you see, green, and this is the red, because that's a critical alert. And the type of alert is info here, type of alert is critical. If I click show more, running pods count, alert name running pods count, namespace, which namespace, what's the expression that we used, description, threshold crossed, data point value 7. As you can see here, does it give you the node name? No, it doesn't give you which node it is. It gives you the name of the cluster and severity, the alert name, expression. Basically I think it's for the 3 worker nodes. So one node, there's 8, 11 and 7. Okay, so 1 per node, and we've got this normal event of deployment occurred. Okay, so now let's go ahead and delete this deployment. kubectl delete deploy nginx, kubectl get all, deployment gone. And did we get any alert? We should receive an alert soon about this deployment as well, because this is a normal deployment event. Show less. Okay, so if I go back to the Rancher dashboard, it's alerting, and let's look at the alert group configuration. Edit. If I click on show advanced options, repeat interval is okay, group interval time is 5, group wait time is 30 seconds, repeat interval time, let's change that to 10 seconds. We don't want to wait 30 seconds. Save. Okay, and the other thing that I want to show you is in the alert group. If I change advanced options, if I set the repeat interval to 5 seconds or 10 seconds, save that, and now we will get an alert, because this is in the alert stage. The number of running pods count is in the alerting state. We should get every 10 seconds we should be getting a Slack notification about this this particular alert. So that's the interval. It's those both are in the alerting state. Resolved, normal event of deployment occurred. So that's the resolved event, because we're not getting any event now for normal deployment. We've got that as resolved. So that's the one that I chose when we configured notifications. So here if I click edit, enable send resolved alert. So that's the setting there, alerts. Okay, so that's returned to normal. Now it's active, but it's not in the alerting phase. But this one is still in the alerting phase. If I go back here, I was expecting the alerts to be happening every 10 seconds, because that's what we've set. Yep, we've got that. The metric running pod count, show more, one for all the other things. And if I edit that alert, let's change that to 10. So now we don't have these two nodes are under the limit, but this one is over the limit. That's only one pod, which is the Kubernetes master pod, that's over the limit. So if I save, we should now get alert just for one node. Okay, and you can see here every 10 seconds we keep getting the alerts. Okay, and the last one, yep, so we are getting alerts every 10 seconds. If I click on here, for 10 seconds. Okay, cool. And we don't want to see this every 10 seconds, so we can change that back to, sorry, it will be in the alert group configuration. Edit the alert group. We don't want to be alerted every 10 seconds. Let's leave that to 1 hour. Save that, and here we got that. Okay, so cool. So we've got our Slack alerts integrated. Anything that happens to the Kubernetes cluster based on the way you configure your alerts, we can get notified via Slack. That's cool. And the other thing I wanted to show you is if we go to the particular project, you will see different types of settings when you create your alerts. So for example, if I go to system, where we've got a number of pods here. If I go to workload, so we've got lots of pods in the system workspace, sorry, system project. And if I go to alerts, there's this alert here, and let's add a new alert group just to show you how it works. So expression is disabled. As you can see here, the expression is disabled because we haven't enabled monitoring. We enabled monitoring only for the cluster level. We haven't enabled monitoring for the workspace level. But when you enable monitoring, you will have this option enabled. And as you can notice here, there are slight differences. When you're selecting a particular project, you can choose the pod that you want to monitor. So it lists all the pods that are running in the system workspace. You can choose any particular pod. For example, if I choose the Prometheus pod, whenever the pod is not running, or if it's not scheduled, or if it's restarted in the last 5 minutes, send a critical warning. Again, choose a notification and so on. Or you can select a workload. Instead of selecting an individual pod, you can also select a workload. So these are the deployments, daemon sets, stateful sets, and so on. You can select that, or workload selector based on key value pairs. So basically you can monitor anything in this system project. Okay, so that's, I just wanted to show you the slight difference, the way you configure alerting for a project or for the global at the cluster level. Okay, so back here, the metric running pods count crossed the threshold, and now you can see it's just one pod because we've set the count, we've set the pod count to 10, and there's only one worker node, sorry, one Kubernetes node, which is probably the master node, is breaching that limit at the moment. So cool, yeah, that's how you configure alerting. So that's Slack alerting. And if I go back to the cluster, and I'm gonna edit this alert here, running pods count, edit, and if I set that to 100, so everything is under the threshold. So if I click save, and soon this will be active, and we will get a resolved notification in the Slack channel. Okay, let's wait for that to happen. If I click refresh, it's still in the alerting phase. I think it checks every 5 seconds or something that we configured, and soon we will see a recovered email for this type of alert. I'm going to pause the video and come back when it's when we receive that. I'm not going to wait here for the alerts to come through. Alright, so I've got my alerts back, and if I scroll over, so these are the normal event of deployment occurred, whatever it is, workload name Nginx, normal event deployment, Yeah, there we go, resolved. The metric running pods count crossed the threshold, so you can see that it's now resolved. And if I go back, yep, that's the running pods count, and it's active now. So it's from the alerting state, alerting phase, to active now, so that it's not in alerting phase at the moment, and we've got that resolved notification. Cool. I think that's all I wanted to show you in this video. Hope you found this useful. If you've got any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to help. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I will see you all in my next video. Bye bye.